You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast, the hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com, thechrisvossshow.com. Hey, we certainly appreciate you guys tuning in. Thanks for being here once again. We have a massive returning guest that we've had on the show before. I think we had him on, I think it was last year. These years are blasting by me, and it's pretty crazy. But we have some of the greatest authors on. In fact, they just reschedule stuff. It's crazy. I've got stuff booked out until December for books coming out. And I'm like, holy, some of our authors are just prolific in what they do. Today we have another amazing author on the show. Yeah, Will Dean is with us today. We had him on for this first book that he had called The Last Thing to Burn. And I got to tell you, you got to read that book. It starts out just gripping you from, I think, the first page or 2 pages and won't let you go. And he's out with his new book. And this is going to be coming out July 5th, 2022, evidently. The title of it is called Firstborn. And it's a novel that's going to be coming out, a psychological thriller about the dark secrets that emerge when a woman's twin sister is murdered. And it's got a signature, intense, gripping, taunt, terrifying, moving, and brilliant, according to Lisa Jewell, #1 New York Times bestselling author. And he is on the show today to talk about his book. Will Dean first grew up in the East Midlands of the United Kingdom and lived in 9 villages before the age of 18. After studying law at London School of Economics and working in London, he settled in rural Sweden, where he built a wooden house in a boggy clearing at the center of a vast elk forest. And it's from this base that he compulsively reads and writes. His debut novel, Dark Pines, was selected for Zoe Ball's book club on ITV, shortlisted for the National Book Awards, and The Guardian's, not the Booker Prize, was named Telegraph Book of the Year. Welcome to the show, Will. How are you?
Hello, Chris. It's good to be back, man. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
There you go. And it's great to have you back as well. I remember our discussion about your living there in the elk forest in a boggy clearing, and you're kind of living the life that maybe a lot of us do, where you're semi-unplugged. Or are you semi-unplugged? Is that a good assessment?
Yeah, we're pretty much off grid. So I have a well over there, where we get our water from. We chop wood for heating and cooking. We grow most of our own food, especially this time of year. We grow all of our own food. And From where I'm sat, I can walk, I can hike pretty much a full day in any direction. I'm still in the same forest.
Wow. That probably worked out good for COVID, right?
Honestly, man, we didn't really, the weird thing is Sweden didn't do anything with COVID. So it was kind of like living in this big experiment anyway. And then in the woods, there was no difference. So it was kind of weird. Yeah.
They did that whole thing where they're just like, fuck it. We're just going for, what was it? It's where they just go and let people get sick and all that stuff. But I think it backfired on the older people. But let's move on to your book. So you've got this amazing book. What made you want to write this one?
So with this one, I had the idea about 3 years ago. And I saw almost like a picture of the globe with 2 sisters on the phone, 2 identical twins on the phone. Molly Raven in London, who is very anxious and controlling and like complicated. She's got a little apartment full of fire alarms and fire blankets, fire extinguishers. And then her sister in New York, Katie, who is like flamboyant, gregarious, party goer, flies around all the time, has a boyfriend, has a full life, studying at Columbia in New York. And I saw the sister in London get a phone call from her parents saying that her identical twin, had been found murdered in New York. And I just realized, like, how is Molly Raven going to handle this? Getting on a plane for the first time, getting her passport out of her fireproof safe for the first time, flying over to New York, being completely overwhelmed by the noise and the expense and the craziness of the city. And then her getting there and realizing she never knew her identical twin as well as she thought she did.
Oh. And is there a possibility of murder with her identical twin?
There is, yeah. That's established pretty soon on, so that's not a spoiler. Yeah, for sure. Like, the police are heavily involved. She's trying to kind of comfort her parents, deal with the grief, and at the same time put a puzzle together of what her dead twin's life was really like. So she starts kind of talking to her dead twin's boyfriend, her tutor, all these people, and she finds a lot of secrets out. And like halfway through the book, it takes a little bit of a change in tone, and she suddenly grows in confidence and starts to seek revenge on the people that wronged her twin.
Murder, you say? Doing that 2020 guy or whoever it is that does that. Tell us more. So it sounds like was she one of those people who's what do they call that? Where they're the shut-ins and they won't leave the house, agoraphobia or something like that. I think that's for spiders, but
she's not quite like that. Yeah, that's used in a lot of thrillers. She's not. She's got a job, like an admin job. She has a fairly normal life, but she's just very like calculating risks, situational awareness to the max. So she walks down the street in New York, and most people her age are just having fun, looking for a restaurant, and she's there like looking at the scaffolding, looking at the water towers, looking at planes, looking at like trucks getting too close to the curb. She's constantly analyzing the risks.
Yeah, you're doing amazing with this. I was just looking here on Amazon. They're launching their hardcover at $36.99, dude. That's pretty awesome for a novel, man. You've already got like 276. So that's in dollars. You already had 276 ratings. It's not out till July.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm lucky. I've got a great editor. Emily Bessler at Simon & Schuster is incredible. So I have a good team.
That is awesome. I mean, 276 reviews and it's not even out yet. That's amazing. So this thing's going to be pretty popular. I can tell when it hits. I mean, yeah, it's got to be awesome. People loved your prior books. So she kind of develops and does some of that sleuthing ability or watching for danger ability end up turning her into a bit of a detective.
It does, in a very dark, kind of sinister way. So I got a DM from someone the other day saying that it was like a cross between Gillian Flynn and the talented Mr. Ripley. And I like that. That's kind of where it sits. So it's quite dark, and things happen that you don't expect. But it's all rooted in the psychology of twins, because I find twins so interesting. When I was researching it, I heard from two identical twins who had never really touched each other since they were young kids. One of them said it was too weird, too freaky to hold hands with the other twin, because it's like looking at yourself in the mirror. I found that really interesting.
That's a really interesting thing. I mean, I always thought twins were like really buddy, but I guess,
Well, with those two, they were really close. They talked to each other constantly throughout the day, like sharing really mundane snippets of information, but they can't touch. That was the thing that was just like, no, I can't do that. I can't give my twin a hug because it's like hugging myself.
Did you interview a lot of... Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, sorry. I two other twins, and this made it into the book, actually. One said that she bought a dress. She didn't tell her twin. The other twin bought the same dress, weirdly, at the same time. And then she saw her twin wearing the dress, and she was like, oh my God, that's how I actually look in the dress. It's not how I look in the mirror. That is how I look and how I move in the dress. I'm never wearing that dress.
Oh, wow. It's kind of like when women show up at a party and someone else has got the red dress or the black dress on or whatever. And they're like, oh my God, they have the same dress. And you're like,
yeah. But imagine that, but it's like you wearing it. That's the weird thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be weird to look at yourself in the mirror. Did you interview a lot of twins for the book?
I didn't interview any twins, but I just did a huge amount of research, like reading blog posts from identical twins and also just siblings. I'm really interested in that sibling rivalry thing. Like with these two, they were treated exactly the same until they were 4 years old. And then the fun one after that was kind of labeled the fun twin. And she was treated as the fun, lighthearted, entertaining one. And the other one was labeled like the serious, difficult twin. And I find it interesting how that resentment can manifest later on in life,
Yeah, and it plays out in the characters and stuff. Were there any movie stars you had in mind when you were writing the book, or anyone in your real life that you were thinking of as some of the characters you're writing about in the book?
Honestly, no. I think now that I'm talking to production companies, I need to start thinking about casting choices, but I never think like that. A lot of authors do, I know that, and that's probably a good idea, but I write in first person, so I see the world. So in this book, I see the world of New York through Molly Raven's eyes. So I don't really know what she looks like even. I'm just looking at like how she deals with the world and how she deals with her dead twin's tutor who was hitting on her, how she deals with her dead twin's neighbor, some incel who lives in the basement, who was really creepy around her. So that's how I see that world.
Wow. And so I want to ask about the incel, or is that going to lead me down a road?
No, you can ask. You can ask.
The incel doesn't. The incel didn't do it then.
Man, I can't tell you that. But he's an interesting character. Because he's an ex-incel. That's the interesting thing. So he's been rejected by the incel community. He was a big part of it, a big YouTuber.
How do you get rejected by the incels? I mean, I thought they were the rejects of the rejects.
Well, this is the interesting thing, right? I'm interested in subcultures, and I went down a rabbit hole with this subculture. I didn't really knew they existed until this book. But this guy was a big incel, and then he suddenly kind of started working out and started seeing girls, and then he got rejected by the incel community, and now he's a YouTuber, but a lot of people don't like him, and so I can't.
Maybe
tell
the
you more,
incel people will kill him. That's their next book. I heard he blew the ending for the next book. No, that's kind of funny. I didn't think. Yeah, you probably get rejected by the incel community. Go the other way. It's so interesting, the incel community. I just look at it and I just go, what the hell have we done wrong the last 60 years? So, what are some other teasers about the book? Is there any stories or tidbits you can tease out for us that you think people will find interesting, or maybe scenarios?
Well, someone who gave me a quote said that it's part murder mystery, part psychological thriller, which I think is spot on. So the first half is very much Molly being in New York, out of her depth. And like, to give you an example of how she is out of her depth or how paranoid she is, when she flies for the first time, she starts researching, can I take a parachute on the plane, like a commercial airplane? She takes knitting needles that are duct taped together in her coat, because you're allowed to do that on a plane. I didn't know that. She takes like all these improvised weapons that are allowed, that she kind of makes on the plane, because she's so terrified of like hijacks and stuff. And when she's in New York, she walks around. She knows she can't walk around with a baseball bat, but she knows she can walk around with a baseball bat and a baseball and get away with it. So there's a lot of that. I researched a lot of like Navy SEALs talking about situational awareness and how to defend yourself in a place like New York, where you're not allowed to defend yourself in other ways. It's really interesting. But in terms of like teasers, this is the twistiest book I've ever written. So it is very, Gillian Flynn, Talented Mr. Ripley. It turns on its head a few times, and I never expected that when I was planning it. That all came as a surprise to me.
Is it like maybe one of those M. Night Shyamalan movies where you won't know until the end?
Kind of, but the thing with him is, like, The Sixth Sense was a masterpiece, right? It's such a good movie, especially when you watch it the second time. But then he went and tried to do that with every subsequent movie, and I think that's difficult to pull off.
It went downhill after that, It just got worse and worse and worse. I think the Mel Gibson movie was the last one I could stand. It was so obvious how the ending was going to be. It was just like, you've overplayed this. But, that was, you can only do that so many times. I don't know. Did Hitchcock do that? I don't remember. What he did was suspense. I love the way he did suspense. So he used to say that the best way to write a suspenseful novel is to have two characters at a table and there's a bomb under the table, and the reader knows there's a bomb, but the characters don't. Because you can string that scene out for hundreds of pages, them just talking, and you know that there's a ticking time bomb. That's the genius of suspense. And I think he's absolutely right. Yeah. What was so amazing about his work was he didn't really believe in actors. He believed in directors and writers, I guess. But he was so critical and so ugly towards actors. And he really felt like he wrote well enough and directed well enough that it didn't matter the actors he could put in his movies. He could just kill based upon, what he did. And I remember seeing recently the Psycho building and how it was shot and the back end of it. And how it was built so that he could do that, that famous shot from top down from the stairs and stuff. It was pretty interesting to see, because he really pioneered some of the cinematography back in the day.
100%. Cool. Yeah. I love the way that he shot his movies. And also I watched the other day, I rewatched The Exorcist, and the way they shot that movie as well with the steps. Oh, yeah. And that building was incredible.
Yeah, that was a hell of a movie. Scared the hell out of me, but such a great movie. But yeah, there's some scenes in there that they'll make me jump every time. Like when the girl comes running down the stairs upside down on her hands. And like, ah!
I know, man. It's And I feel sorry for the actress because, like, what a thing to. Sorry, we're not talking about my book anymore, but what a thing to act when you're like 12 years old. You know, how do you move on from that in life? Yeah,
yeah. I think my 6 wives are the same way. The every now and then run around like that. So, are most of your books psychological thrillers? Remind me if they are or aren't. They're suspense.
Yeah, I think they're just dark, unsettling books. Yeah, they're suspenseful. Yeah. I don't think every novel needs a big twist, but I think when you come up with one, it can be really satisfying, like a Gone Girl twist or a Shutter Island twist. It's a beautiful thing when it happens.
So who hurt you? No, I'm just kidding. What makes it so that you aspire to these types of novels that they're built this way? They're thrillers.
It's just what I read, As a kid, I think Roald Dahl was a big inspiration as a little kid, and they were really freaking dark, those books. And the teenager, I was reading, I come from a blue-collar family with no books in the house whatsoever, not a single book. My mum was good enough to take me to a local mobile library truck a lot. And I used to get Stephen King novels out. She didn't know that they were completely unsuitable for like an 11-year-old, but I would read these things and I would reread them. His books back then were really big, but I would get through them. And so he's a big inspiration as well. Just going to a dark place. I felt like I was from this small town and I felt like an alien growing up. I wasn't one of the cool kids at all. And reading fiction was my escape until I got out of that small town. And still now, I love reading dark fiction, unsettling fiction. It doesn't have to be a thriller, but anything where it's like, okay, this author's taking me to a really interesting place where I'm going to feel uncomfortable. I like that.
Yeah. You like the freedom of being able to go those places and write that way?
I guess I don't really think about it like that. The reason I write, and I'm just lucky that I get to be a full-time writer here in the woods, but the reason I do it is for that first draft buzz when I'm telling myself a story for the first time that's never existed before.
Yeah. And
I write my first drafts in 3 or 4 weeks, which is unhealthily quick. And I'm just in a kind of fever dream state. I'm just enjoying it. I'm like a kid again, And then when I'm done, then all the rewriting starts, which is just a 9-to-5 job. But that first draft is a lot of fun.
Yeah, you just pound it out. That's awesome, man. You just have that gift for it. Well, it sounds like it's going to be a fun book, and it's already popular. 276 ratings. It's not even out yet. What is it, out next week, I think? Yeah, next week, a week from now. So that should be pretty awesome. Anything more you want to touch on, Will, or tease out about the book before we go?
I don't think so. I'm happy if people read it and enjoy it. I'm getting a lot of letters and emails on this book already from bloggers and stuff, which is great because I don't normally get that. People are emailing me and DMing me at a particular point in the book. It's always the same point. That's quite fun. So if anybody wants to get in touch when they get to that point, I'm happy to talk.
Find out what that is. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on, Will. We really appreciate it. Give us your .com so people can find you on the interwebs.
On Instagram, Twitter, Will Dean Author, TikTok, and on YouTube, I'm Will Dean Forrest Author. And on there, it's not about my books. Will Dean Forrest Author is about me giving other writers tips on how to get an agent, how to get published, how to make money from being an author.
Now, I recall that. Yes, you have a YouTube channel on it as well, right?
Yeah, so I share my query letter that got me an agent because it's hard to get a literary agent. It's tough. Yeah. And so I wanted to just give that up so it would help other people and try and give people a little bit of confidence that they can do it because a lot of writers are from literary families in London and New York, and I was not that person. And I never thought I'd be able to be a writer. So anybody else like me, I want to give them a little helping hand or a bit of confidence that they can do it as well.
There you go. I remember watching your videos. Well, thank you very much, Will, for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. Great to be back.
Thank you. And continued success, my friend. Thanks, Mountains, for being here. Be sure to go check out all of our properties on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all those places the cool kids are playing. YouTube.com/Chris Voss. And then the big LinkedIn for all that sort of stuff. And the goodreads.com/Chris Voss as well. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. And we'll see you guys next time.